Conservation District. I also spend a little time as administrator of the Sunrise River Watershed Management Organization.
Okay, on the other side of me, I see Caleb.
Caleb Anderson, Pine County, and I actually am in the office right next to Paul, so I'm pretty lucky.
So he knows you. All right, I see Jay next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Riggs. I'm the district manager of the Washington Conservation District, and I think I'm on every technical committee on this process. So I'm looking for volunteers.
Jay Riggs does not want to continue being an overachiever. Below Jay, I see Matt Downing.
I'm Matt Downing. I'm the administrator for Middle St. Croix Watershed Management Organization.
All right, and then next to Matt, I see Paul. Do you want to introduce yourself to the rest of us?
Yeah.
Nope, you just muted.
Okay, unmuted.
There you
my
go.
name's Paul Colson. I'm the new district manager for Pine Soil and Water Conservation District. I've kind of been taking Jill's place since September when she left on an interim position. I was the district forester here, so I've been with the district for a few years. I officially became the manager in December. And I apologize for not being able to come to any meetings earlier. I've just been trying to get my feet under myself and going. Caleb, like you said, we're office mates. He's in the office just next to me. He's been a really good resource trying to keep me up to pace with things going on, and including in Lower St. Croix. So I'm just mostly here to listen and learn and try and catch up where everyone else is at. So
Awesome. Welcome to the group. Matt Moore.
Hi,
No.
Matt Moore with the Southwestern Watershed District.
Matt Moore with Southwestern Watershed District, if it cut out for you all like it did for me. Tiffany.
Hi, Paul. It's nice to meet you. I'm Tiffany Detterman, the district manager with Isanti Soil and Water.
All right, Craig.
Sorry, I was turning my video on. I forgot the camera was closed. Hey, Paul, this is Craig down in Chisago, SWCD. Welcome to the group. Welcome to the area. We were the fiscal agent for the planning grant, and now it looks like we're going to be the fiscal agent for the implementation grant. Woo-hoo. So welcome.
Good times, good times. Fiscal agency, so fun. Let's go with Dan.
Howdy, I'm Dan Fabian with the Board of Water and Soil Resources. So I'm the board conservationist, other than Lower St. Croix, where I have a little bit of pine. I cover Anoka, Chisago, Isanti, and Washington counties.
All right, Emily.
Hi, Emily Hines. I'm the planning coordinator for Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and I'm a member of the planning team for Lower St. Croix.
Excellent. Maureen.
Hi, I'm Maureen Hoffman. I'm with Washington County Public Health and Environment as a planner.
Excellent. Barb.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Barb Heichel. I'm a clean water specialist at the Board of Water and Soil Resources. And for Paul's benefit, Dan and I are your Aaron Loeffler and your Jeff Rubish. So we're here for you for this planning process anytime you have questions and want to talk about it. But Caleb's obviously a good choice too.
Okay, Jerry.
Good morning. This is Jerry Spetzman. I'm the administrator with the Chisago Lakes Lake Improvement District.
And Mike.
Hi, Mike Eisenstein. Yeah, only one mic today. Yep. Yeah, so I'm Mike Eisenstein. I'm the administrator of the Carnelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District, and that's the watershed along the St. Croix right at the very northern half of Washington County.
Excellent. I think that is everybody then. I did not print out the agenda as a Word document. I just have it in the email body that I sent to you all last week. But planning team members, feel free to jump in and add to this. What we need to do today is review and approve the proposed framework for how we will implement the activities in our WBIF work plan. We need to identify lead agencies for several activities. Something that we're hoping that we could do during this meeting is to use the online spreadsheet to fill in activities that are happening through local funds or through other funding sources, because in addition to having a WBIF grant work plan, we also need to have an annual work plan that says everything that we're doing during the next 2 years, not just with WBIF funds. And we are having a policy committee meeting on March 22nd. So I just want to make sure that I know all the things that need to go onto the agenda for that meeting. Does that sound good to everybody, or does anybody have anything to add to that or questions on that?
Angie, can we just give a quick update on where we are today? As far as, do you want to take the lead on that? How do you want me to take the lead? It doesn't matter.
Well,
Perfect.
let me see if I just roll down. I think that this provides the update, but why don't you can take the lead on that, Craig, since you're the one that actually is submitting a lot of this paperwork and grant reporting.
Let me just see what you have written up here. So yeah, we did finalize.
Hold on, before we start jumping into that, there's one other thing I want to add to the agenda.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Sorry, Craig. I want to have clear guidance on when we can officially post for the shared staffing positions.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to open and put stuff into a Word document so that I can add notes as we're talking.
And then tied to that, I would like to get volunteers to help us put together finalize the job description, pull together the materials for the policy committee and how we're going to be conducting, or what we're proposing as the resume review and interview invitation process, and who would like to be on the interview panel, or who we think should be on the interview panel for both of the positions if we go that route.
Okay. All right. One moment, Craig. Well, I'm just going to move into the Word document that I just created instead of the body of my email. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are we good to go, Angie?
I think so.
Thank you.
I just maybe will just add what Jay said right here. So in addition to lead agencies, we want volunteers for hiring committees or for selection committees.
Yep, and then clear guidance from this group on when we want to post.
Okay. Yep.
So as you guys recall, back in January, the policy committee approved and recommended the work plan and budget that was developed by the steering committee. That went to our local boards, was approved by 15 of the 16 local boards. Then on February 24th, it was submitted to Bowser as an application. That's the process it goes through. It was submitted similar to a Clean Water Fund grant application with an abstract and the activities outlined in a budget. That application was submitted, like I said, on the 24th, and it was approved by Bowser on March 1st. So we now have the funds earmarked for this project and set aside in Bowser. The next process, we have been working as a planning team to refine the activities through a series of discussions, which we'll be reviewing and discussing today with this group. The goal is to have this finalized this week. So next week, you can see our goal is to submit the final work plan and budget in eLink. I guess not budget, that's already in there, but the final work plan in eLink. My board is set tomorrow to meet, and we will be I'm asking them to authorize me to sign and submit the grant agreement once it has been finalized by Bowser. So as soon as the funds can become available, we have that availability to get going on projects. And then we will be working on contracts with the partners under task or activities. I believe it's 1, 3, and 10. They're kind of these staff activities up and going right away. That's the ag outreach agronomist person, the activity 3. Angie, what's activity 3 technically called? What was that? What's your MRAP activity or MRAP education specialist type person called? Do you have a? Well, anyway, it's the non-ag. Oh, it's not. I shouldn't say non-ag. It's the second shared services person.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called either. I could remember in a moment.
And then activity 10. Activity 10 is the administrative tasks, which are shared amongst Washington Conservation District, the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Water District, and the Chisago Lake, or Chisago Soil and Water Conservation District. So we'll finalize those in our April 13th at our board meeting. So that's everything as of today. So again, our plan today, our goal today is to basically finalize the work plan, get that wrapped up so we can get submitted next week and hopefully have approval from Bowser by the mid to late March, as you can see in the time frame. Thank you.
All right, any questions before I go on to the draft framework for implementing the WBIF?
Yeah, a quick question for Dan Fabian. Any expected delays in Bowser signing the grant agreement? It'd be pretty quick, or are there people out of the office, or what kind of internal process do you expect there? Days or more?
Well, I don't know about days. I would say within a week. We get them. We sign them with that kind of DocuSign or whatever digitally now. I think it goes to. I think this still goes to Kevin. It might be Ryan. We're in the middle of our central region doesn't actually have a supervisor right now because of hiring freezes and stuff. But yeah, I mean, most of the other grant agreements don't seem like they take a long time to turn around, anywhere from a couple days to less than a week. And we also know that the deadline is the 31st, so
right.
It'll be done by then.
Very good, thanks.
Okay, I will then share with you the framework for implementing the WBIF grant funds, and this was sent out last week, so you should have had a chance to look at it already. This is not the full details like what was included in the work plan that the policy committee approved, nor is it the even greater detail that needs to go into the e-link reporting. This is just kind of so that we all understand who's in charge of each activity and what are the next steps for each activity. And this is something that we would be bringing to the policy committee on March 22nd as well, for them to kind of approve, like, this is a good process for moving forward. So we're not asking them to get into nitty-gritty details as to what specific projects are going to get funded or not funded, because that's something that will happen during the course of the year, that projects will be selected, but this is just like the process that will be used. So I can just walk through this and then maybe
hey, Angie,
yeah,
maybe expedite this process. I have a couple suggestions.
Okay.
Number one, I don't really like how the non-structural ag and urban are combined, and because they're very different types of practices. So my recommendation would be to structure the implementation in the advisory, the lead agencies, based on how we're actually going to be implementing these things. So my suggestion would be to have a structural, non-structural ag be implementation lead, and a structural, non-structural urban BMP lead.
Okay.
And the structural, non-structural ag BMP lead would be Chisago, and the structural, non-structural urban BMP lead would be Carnelian Marine St. Croix. Or whoever else might volunteer for that, but those are just some thoughts.
So
thank you, Jay. And I just wanted chime in. This is Mike Eisenstein. That I agree with that breakout, and that that we would be fine taking the lead for that non-structural, structural urban BMP.
One moment while I make this into an editable document. Sorry, this is one of the things that's difficult when something is on a shared screen, then it's hard for me to be able to access. Just give me one moment, sorry, to be able to edit this document that is sitting in front of me.
We do like the verbal play-by-play of what you're actually doing on the screen too, so thank you.
I know, sorry.
It's very helpful for all the cool people that are in on the phone. I would also note, I would also note that Carnelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District is also looking at if you'd like a lead agency for the targeting component. And I don't know if you want to keep targeting as its own category, if you want to break that up, because again, there's kind of ag and rural targeting, and then there's urban targeting. So I just mentioned that as well.
That's an interesting point, Mike.
Jay, before you talk anymore, can I just make sure because I just got the document open and I want to make sure that I'm capturing thoughts before we move on to new thoughts.
Yes, I would just like to add that on a separate topic that Emily offered to take notes as well.
Excellent. Emily, are you taking notes currently?
Yeah, so I can be keeping track of edits on the e-link work plan. I wasn't taking like minutes though.
Okay. I mean, I was not planning on taking minutes either, but what I think I'm hearing Jay suggesting, the very first suggestion you made, Jay, was that basically we would just add on to when we're saying there's a structural ag BMP subcommittee, I'm just going to add one more bullet that says this subcommittee is also the same subcommittee looking at the non-structural ag practices, right?
Correct.
And then the same thing for urban. And then when I get in this section, we can just say, you know, refer to activity 2 and refer to activity 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, then carry on talking.
Angie, can I just interject please for a second? Guys, what I'm looking for here ultimately as a Chisago SWC is the fiscal agent. Everything at the end of the day gets approved or disapproved, I guess, whichever we're looking at, by the Chisago SWC board. What we're looking for as a Chisago SWC, we want clear recommendation and clear guidance on every activity. So any task that is approved by my board, we want to come through. And I think our goal here is a staff, and it can be staff / policy committee if we prefer, but a staff-led committee that will be making a recommendation based off of this framework that we're going to be developing today. And so then what would happen is we would have a recommendation coming for whether it's cost share projects or programs such as non-structural, moving forward that would come through a committee, whether it's the full steering committee, ultimately it's going to be this subcommittee, and the lead agency will be the one coordinating that group. So if it's the Carnelian Marine for the urban stuff, they'll be the ones pulling together the subcommittees, taking kind of the notes, making the recommendation, and where that recommendation goes ultimately will be to the Chisago SWCD for approval. So, did I capture that correctly with the other planning team members?
That sounds good to me. I have a question for Matt Moore. Matt, you have a potential project that is a mix of both urban and ag. And so a lot of the ravine projects, for example, might be a mix. And I don't want to create these artificial advisory committees. How would we, I mean, I'd rather lump the advisory committees to streamline the process for credit.
Right. We put it in the ag BMP area.
Okay. Got it.
So we have two projects the next 2 year BMP area. And we're coming after all the implementation money.
Okay, can I take a step backwards? Sorry, things moved too quickly for me to be able to keep up and while also editing the document. Structural ag BMP implementation, which will also be looking at non-structural ag BMP implementation. Was there a suggestion as to who the lead agency is for this? Or did we only suggest a lead agency?
Chisago. I did suggest Chisago for that, but that because the majority of the ag area in the water in the basin is in Chisago.
And I'm fine being a team lead. My goal is today is I'd like to see as many of our partners engaged in taking a kind of a leadership role with this project to move it forward. So I'm happy to take that lead, but if anybody else would like to do this lead agency.
Or if anybody else wants to be a co-lead perhaps for this one too.
Ultimately, the Chisago SCC is going to be a co-lead for everything because of the subcontracts with local partners. So.
Yeah, it would just, if you end up being the lead for this one, then you are, everything else, there's a co-lead and this would be the only one that it's only you. So perhaps if somebody wants to take on the role of co-lead for the urban BMP implementation.
So, so back to ag, Angie, I think if we can have other staff members involved, I would suggest that Angela in our office be the co-lead contact. So we could say WCD as long as it's not me.
Okay.
That's just, I can do that. I mean, I can offer that, but we don't need to be the co-lead. It was just offering.
So we're going to need to define, how many members do we want on each committee? And that's something to be defined. Do we want just staff? Are we recommending just staff? Are we recommending a mix of staff and PC members? My preference would be staff. It's just easier for timing, is getting meetings together. It's maybe more difficult. We try to lump in policy committee members, but that's open to discussion.
Yeah, Matt Downing just pointed out that Angela is going to be on leave for a little while, but I'd still like her as the point contact for the committee, but we'd have to have an alternate while she's out on leave.
Okay. Who did you, sorry, where did we go? Urban BMP stuff, was this where Carmer was volunteering? Correct. And not Comfort Lake, Forest Lake as previously? Okay.
It would be combined structural, non-structural, yep. Urban, and yep. Mike Eisenstein has volunteered.
Okay. Since we do need to answer that question that Craig is asking about how many people are involved in these subcommittees, are they always a mix of staff and policy committee members? Are some of them just staff? Could we just go through item by item?
That'd be great if we made a third bullet behind, the lead agencies, make a third bullet and put, interested parties or whatever, members, team members or whatever you want to call it. I think it'd be great to get as much participation as possible.
I think having a policy committee member on these committees might really help, especially considering we have some really knowledgeable policy committee members, especially for the ag portion.
I'll just throw this out there for the basin. If we're following up on Jay, then I have 2 recommendations for the basin ag outreach program from Chisago. For the ag, I have a current policy committee member at large is Lance Peterson. Yep. Mr. Peterson is the one non-appointed or elected board member on this policy committee. He is appointed by the Chisago County Board, but he's not elected to a board. He's not representing a board. Peterson is SEN, by the way, Angie, just as a FYI.
Yep, I was just going to ask you that right after I typed it.
No, he's a Macwick farmer. He's 100% strip till. They have buffers on their property because of public ditches. He's part of the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition. He's one of their board members, or one of their mentors, excuse me. I think Lance would be great. He represents Chisago County. The second one would be Dave Tolberg. David Tolberg is a Chisago SWCD alternate to this board. Dave is an agronomist. That's his lifelong. He's in his 60s. He's been an agronomist his entire life. I think that speaks volumes why I would recommend him. He's a SWCD member, Angie, alternate.
Oh, SWCD, not, okay. Yeah. Just need to add SWCD then.
Thanks, Craig. I think that will really help the process.
Okay, so we have 2 suggestions for policy committee members. the suggestion previously was that we would have a selection committee of up to 5 staff and policy committee members. So I would assume that the other 3 are going to be staff. Jay, I assume that you're going to be one of the people. Am I correct?
On this one, yeah.
I mean, since you're the person who is going to be hiring.
If we are the host and we are hiring a personnel, I am going to be on the committee.
Yeah, so I was like, I can't see how you could function without that. Okay, so then we have space to hopefully have 2 other staff representatives from this group. So who else would like to be added to this list?
This is Caleb. I would serve on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Caleb.
Okay. Any others? Any others?
Well, Angie, I'm willing to serve on it, but I mean, we're already covered with 2 Sauk County people at that end. So I mean, if others will do it, I'd be happy to step aside. For others, I will take and serve on that also.
Angie, Matt Moore, I can.
Is that a volunteer? Are you volunteering, Matt, to be on the Basin Ag Outreach Selection Committee? Sorry.
I can do it.
I think that'd be good. It would cover 3
If
different.
you want someone from the south side.
SWC County and one.
Okay.
I can do it.
Thanks, Matt. That's awesome.
Okay. Does anybody, just looking at this section here, the Basin Ag Outreach Program section that I have highlighted, does anybody see any changes needed to what we are proposing as our framework moving forward?
So our recommendation at the policy committee level then would be to have these 5 people serve on the interview committee, and if one, and they could choose to have somebody else in policy committee, but this would be our recommendation, correct?
That is what I think we are recommending. And these 5 people are also, establishing the list of activities to be completed by this position and conducting a cost benefit analysis of contracting versus hiring, then conducting interviews. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Jay is the lead agency. Are you good with that group?
That is an awesome group.
Awesome. Love the word awesome. Okay. Well, then let's just keep rolling down to structural ag BMP implementation. So this would be a Chisago SWCD with co-lead WCD and a subcommittee. Right now, I say a subcommittee composed of Lower St. Croix partners will be developed. I didn't specify if it will be both staff and policy committee members or just staff, but to establish cost share ranking criteria, meet intermittently to rank projects and make recommendations to Chisago SWCD. The subcommittee will also select non-structural ag projects, and everything will, of course, meet approved standards through NRCS and Bowser.
One thing I guess I'll recommend in this one, and I sure don't want to kick things down the road, but I mean, are we ready for applications to come in for cost share request? And that's what, I mean, to me, this committee needs to, or this group, whether it's a steering committee or this committee, however you want to do it, we need to develop the process following our approved plan on how we're going to fund projects. And so that's what this group, to me, we need some people who are willing to really help develop that, taking the current approved plan and develop that funding process and how we're going to rank applications. Is it going to be first come, first serve? Is it on a time period where applications come in? How are we going to do all of these things to encumber the funds? We got to talk about match. The big match components come from the 2 construction projects. So there's a match component to it. There's a lot to be done with these, with activity 2 and activity, I believe it's activity 4. And so these two committees may meet independently and then may need to meet together as we kind of form these things so they run similar. I don't, just things we need to discuss.
Yeah, this is Mike. I agree. agree, Craig, and I think the other big component for the lead agency for these programs is the tracking component. As we approve how are we making progress towards our goals, and then also we have a lot of ag practices that aren't part of the funding approval, and so we want to make sure that we incorporate those other pieces that we're tracking for our 10-year progress. And then I just would like to ask one other question too, just for clarification. Have we combined the non-structural ag and the structural ag together, similarly to the urban?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I can't see the modified document.
That was my request and suggestion to the group.
Yes, so for both the urban and the ag, I just took away the information under activity 4, so it just says CE activities 2 and 5. I know that for the purposes of eLink, we had to separate them out budgetarily, but that way in terms of how they're implementing, it's just the same group of people. I'm wondering, what you just outlined, Craig, is a lot of work. And I don't want to exclude policy committee members, but I'm wondering if that's something that's going to need to be done with a staff committee and not a policy and staff.
I agree with you,
committee.
Angie. I agree with you, Angie. I do. But again, I don't want to exclude this policy committee, but I really think this is going to be something that's going to take time. Activities 2, 3, or 2, 4, and 5, or whatever they are here, the cost share portion of our budget is going to take time to develop this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I very much want policy committee members to be involved in the selection committee for the basin ag outreach position and for the education outreach position. But then, these other ones, this is going to be meeting multiple times throughout the year and, reviewing applications as they're coming in. It seems like a lot more work than a policy committee member really necessarily signed up for when they joined the policy committee.
I would welcome a large group of people to please participate in the subcommittee, on these subcommittees. I welcome, if you're at all into it, I don't care if you're not into ag BMPs or urban BMPs, if you're at all interested in help determine how we're going to spend these funds to implement to get projects on the ground, I ask that you be part of these committees, and because we have a lot of work to get done, and it should not be done by just 1 or 2 people. This needs to come as a strong recommendation from our groups.
Thanks, Craig, for the guilt trip. I can help.
I was going to say the same thing. I can help too.
Thank you.
I would also, Ms. Caleb.
Cool.
This really has to be staff driven though.
Yeah. I'm just adding names of people that I think have volunteered. So if you see your name appearing and you didn't want it there, tell me.
I think Barb brings up a good point. I'd really like any of these tasks. I think it's great if at the end of the day, these subcommittees are making a recommendation to the full steering committee. I would 100% support that. I think we need to move that forward. I don't know if the policy committee then wants to meet and review all of these recommendations, but my board wants a clear recommendation coming from this group before they make a motion.
So under structural ag BMP.
Want to maybe.
Dan, sorry, what were you saying?
That's. I was just wondering, do you want to, before you hold that first subcommittee meeting, send out an invite one more time to the lead staff in case they want to join in? I got to believe Kenny would want to be involved in anything to do with ag based on what he'd provided previously on who he thought should lead stuff. So, and I'm not sure about, some of the other watersheds and that too. Yeah, there you go. Question mark.
I think we definitely need to market participation in these groups. We have a lot of expertise and a lot of diverse expertise actually we need to tap into. The other thing I want to point out too is that when we have new staff, If we have new staff or whoever, however we have the agronomist involved, that person needs to be on this committee as well.
Agreed.
So depending on the timing, or at least have an agronomist involved in that conversation. So either the staff agronomist or contract agronomist or Lance. And
that brings up a question though, Jay, because, you know, earlier you were suggesting Angela, and of course, you know, the other SWCDs also have staff who are currently working with farmers. I mean, are any of those staff people who could be on this committee in lieu of having to only have members of the steering committee be on there?
You know, that's a good question. I think that depending on how this process moves forward, we may want to do a much larger workshop that involves more people in addition to the steering committee. So I think there are ways we can bring other people into this conversation to make sure that we have the best incentive programs and mechanisms for getting the funding onto the ground as possible. So I didn't answer.
Hey, Riggs, did you mention you'd be on this subcommittee?
Oh, sorry, I didn't put Jay's name down. He did. Okay, does anybody see any revisions needed to this process in general, though, that we are going to have a subcommittee? It may expand to include additional staff from other organizations, people like Angela, Mary Jo, other folks that are working with farmers.
I'm wondering if Emily or Maureen or any of the other folks in this meeting today would be interested in participating in this one. Paul? Or is there another subcommittee that you're?
I would totally volunteer for this one. I guess it would make more sense for the pine to be involved in the ag compared to some of the other ones, so.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I think the forestry piece is something that we're definitely gonna tap into your expertise, because it's not as specifically identified in the implementation plan, but anytime we're talking about buffers or bluff land management, the forestry piece is going to be a big piece of that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to help with that whenever, so feel free
Excellent.
to reach out.
Thank you. I'll call you.
I appreciate that, but this is a good group to get started. I think this is really good. Emily, I have one question for you. Mike Kinney's absent today from the conversation. Is he still interested in being part of the group, you know, or is he just busy with something else today?
So yeah, today is our annual audit. So he is in an audit meeting today. Yeah. But yeah, so our board meets this Thursday. Our board members wanted to discuss the work plan a little bit more and kind of what our staff involvement would be. I didn't realize we were going to be picking the subcommittee members today. I thought we were just going to be focusing on the leads. So unfortunately, I need to wait for my board direction before I can volunteer me or Mike's name for any of the subcommittee members, but I will circle back once I have direction on that.
We can always add people. That's not a problem. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Mike Eisenstein. So I have approval from my board to participate on 3 committees, and I didn't, like Emily, I didn't differentiate between a lead or as a subcommittee member. So that's why I'm not. Although ag is a very critical part for our watershed, and I want to make sure that we're thinking about, as Jay had pointed out, like the bluffland areas. And forestry management, and especially the non-structural practices. I trust that the group will make good decisions without me. So I appreciate the opportunity to jump in on that one, but I'm going to wait for some other subcommittees.
So Mike, do you want to, since you know which 3, do you want to just tell me and I'll just kind of add those in right now? I mean, maybe that's a more logical way for the whole group if everybody knows, like, these are the 2 or 3 committees I want to be on, rather than us. I don't know. Just tell me.
Yeah, I didn't. I just really had the 2 for sure that I knew, which would be the prioritization work and the targeting and analysis, and then the what's now the non-structural and the structural urban BMP. So I haven't thought about that third location yet. Internal load evaluation is one that I would be interested in working either as a subcommittee member, or we could also take the lead on that one, since we're going to be coordinating, possibly coordinating one or two other groups.
I think that Chisago County is taking the lead for the internal analyses.
Oh, perfect.
But you could be one of the subcommittee members for that one if you're interested in that.
Jerry,
Yeah, that would be great.
That?
Yeah, this is Jerry. Yes. Chisago County would be interested in the internal analysis, and my name, and I assume both my name and Susanna's would be on there.
Did I get her last name right?
Yes, thank you. Hear me? I'm kind of having some technical difficulties.
Oh, you're here. I didn't know you were here.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
yes, yes. I
right.
was able to. It took a while. I was just, everything was freezing up. So, yeah,
Okay.
Chisago County, we'd be happy to be lead agency on that.
Okay, so we got too many somethings in here. EAE, too many S's. Okay. All right, so it sounds like base and ag outreach, structural ag BMP, we're kind of set there. And then the next one in the list then is the outreach program. And so do we have thoughts of who is interested in being on the selection committee, or who from the policy committee we want to invite, or are we going to be asking for volunteers at the March 22nd meeting? I'm obviously going to put my own name on the selection committee here. Jay, are you also going to be on that selection committee?
Yes.
Obviously, okay.
Angie,
Yeah,
Emily Johnson
this is
said she would be willing to serve on that if it's helpful.
Emily, did you say?
Yes, Emily Johnson.
That would be
Okay,
great.
that would be great. Okay. Jerry?
Yeah, this
will you
is
turn the
Jerry Spetzman. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay. Do we want to seek volunteers for one policy committee member to be on here? We said a selection committee comprised of up to 5 people. Do we want to allow up to 2 policy committee members and have it be a 6-person committee?
We can.
I don't know. I don't have any particular thoughts on who to invite as a policy committee member.
Angie, I've got some ideas, but they're folks that I would rather not commit them, but rather have a policy committee discussion where I can encourage them to get involved, but let them make that choice for themselves. So maybe that would be an agenda item for the upcoming policy committee meeting.
Okay. So does it work if I say these 4 staff and we have space for 2 policy committee members, and I ask for discussion and volunteers at the March 22nd meeting?
Jay and Angie, are you okay with that? You're the lead, you're the lead agency on this one.
I'm cool with that. My only other point would be I would really like to have gender equity on any selection committees.
Okay.
We're not a real diverse organization.
I know, I was like, so we're doing good on the education hiring committee, but not on the base and ag outreach committee.
Yep, that's not good.
Okay.
I'd be willing to defer my spot.
Thanks, Caleb.
This is Maureen. I can take Caleb's spot.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yep.
Okay. All right. This is not necessarily part of this question, but Jay and I very much want to know when it is okay to post the position, especially for, this is me in particular, I would really like to post this position tomorrow. And even without necessarily having our selection committee set, I think it would be okay to post the position and start giving applicants time to apply. And I'm wondering how other steering committee people feel about that, if you're comfortable with us posting tomorrow.
Angie, this is Craig. We have a work plan that was approved, recommended by the policy committee, was approved by more than 2/3 of the members who are signed on the JPA. That's the work plan we're working on moving forward with. It's been submitted to Bowser as an application, been approved. To me, you can start posting for these jobs now. I would, obviously you can't bill at all towards the grant for any time until we have the approved grant agreement and then subcontracts with the partner agencies. And I mean, honestly, it's the 8th of March today. You're not going to have an offer out until April, I'm just assuming, the time frame.
I mean, that's what I'm looking at, is giving people time to look at and apply, for us to schedule interviews, conduct interviews, make an offer, wait to see if the person accepts the offer, gives their 2 weeks notice. And that's already looking like somebody won't be able to start until May. So I don't want to push out the posting any longer than tomorrow.
Absolute worst case scenario, we fall flat on our face. Not we as a Chicago City, this group falls flat on their face and it internally blows up. You don't make the offer. You got to change. I mean, we're not out anything. It's not like you're making an offer to somebody today. So my recommendation is we move forward with it, you know, pending the money or the finalize of the work plan and the funding coming.
Hey, this Dan, did you guys do a job description in that everybody agreed on already? I thought there was some discussions on it, but I don't remember hearing that.
I have a job description that I shared with the planning team. We have, you know, we have a basic job description that was in the approved work plan that the policy committee approved. But not, you know, like it's not like the job posting.
Well, position announcement is different than a job description. So we're asking for okay to post when we can finalize and revise the job description prior to the interview process. And the position announcement would be not quite as detailed, obviously. But we can send it out to the group to have any feedback on before we post it, if that's what the group would like.
This is Mike. I'm actually fine with posting the position, simply again because if there's the detail really comes in the development of the job position and the position description. And I agree with Angie that it'd be great to have the educator on board by May of this year.
And obviously one of the reasons that Angie is interested in getting this position hired as soon as possible is because it's half of it is Washington County MREP and the other half is basin scale.
Yes, so right now I am operating down a position, and so I am very much interested in having my education support back in place as soon as possible.
Yeah, luckily we have internal support, but that really dissipates quickly once the field season starts. If people, I have a position announcement all drafted up. Does anybody want me to open it and show it to people right now, just as long as we're all gathered in a group? I would say do it.
Okay, I will do it. I will. All right, here we go. Washington, or Water Resource Education Specialist, full-time regular position, starting salary dependent on qualifications. Washington Conservation District is seeking a highly motivated and uniquely qualified individual to conduct water education within the 5-county region of the Lower St. Croix watershed. This position will provide support for the East Metro Water Resource Education Program, as well as implementation of the Lower St. Croix Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. The ideal candidate will be skilled at building partnerships, communicating with a wide variety of audiences in person and via print and online platforms, and conducting education in non-formal settings. So we have a list of the kinds of things they may do. And like Jay said, it is not a complete job description. This is not saying how many hours during the year they will spend on every single one of these things, but the kinds of things that they might do, including conducting public education, creating print materials, creating, delivering education, planning, promoting, conducting workshops, conducting education for local decision makers, building partnerships, coordinating regularly with local government partners, including this group. Yep, there we go. That's what it is. I saw something in the chat. Oh, Dan just said that his internet keeps cutting out. Does anybody want me to keep this open longer or have any thoughts?
Angie.
Yes.
I would really like to get Emily Johnson's feedback on this.
Okay.
And also, I think that I still want to try to integrate more emphasis of rural outreach.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can tweak under the duties and responsibilities to make it clear that rural audiences are a potential partner or a audience. Anything else from the group? Anybody else? Okay.
So does that mean we have the okay from the group to post?
With the discussion points you just had, I give it a thumbs up, yeah.
That's a good idea. Jamie, everybody use your little thumbs up thing. If you feel if you feel okay with
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
There's also a crying face if you feel that way.
Okay, yeah, I was like, now the only problem is I don't think that Zoom gives you a thumbs down option if you want to do a thumbs down, but I'm also hoping.
How about crying face just means a little more discussion?
Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping if you want more discussion that you will just unmute yourselves or put something in the chat to let us know that you want more discussion. I don't by any means want.
Yeah, sorry. Please speak up if you have any questions or concerns, because I don't want to move forward with this process without the strong support of the steering committee.
Angie, Matt Moore.
Thank you, Angie. I do support it moving forward with the announcement. Thank you. And then further reviewing the job description at a later time. I understand the timeliness of hiring for new positions. Thank you.
Yep. Matt Moore, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I really want to make sure that we get a good position description together. So we post it is fine, but you know, somebody's got to look at what they're being.
Yes. And I can also send to the group. Let's see, I had put together a 3-page document with details as to what exactly the education position would complete, at least the WBIF component of the education position. So I can send that around to the steering committee. I could even just send it right now. Or I could just visually show it right now. I have this as a starting place. It can obviously be adapted, but took what was approved by the policy committee already in terms of, you know, what is in the WBIF work plan, and noted some of the activities that this position will do, high priority and secondary priority activities that will be accomplished. These things, number 1 through 5, come straight from pages 41 and 42 of our One Watershed, One Plan. But I took an attempt at putting some program goals related to mid shoreline standards, wetland protection, chlorides. To Jay's point about including a better emphasis on rural outreach, that's something that maybe this needs to be tweaked, to take something out that's currently in here and put more rural outreach in. Is everybody else still here?
That's a great idea, Angie.
Sorry, all of a sudden everybody's screen was black and everybody was muted, and I was like, am I still in the meeting? Is anybody else here with me? Mike, which component of what I said are you saying is a good idea? Do you want me to send this out to the full steering committee right now for people to look at?
I think what I heard in there was with the modification to incorporate the ag education outreach, and then Matt was noting that that we need to pull a full position description together. And I think that for me, I'd be more interested in having an opportunity to input on the full position description. And so I would recommend that we send that out to the group.
Okay.
So for the position announcement, I've seen a lot of thumbs up and no crying faces. The one thing I would like to ask the group then is, the position announcement has only has one logo on it. And I'm wondering if there's a way for us, we don't have a logo for the Lower St. Croix. And I'm wondering if we should somehow emphasize Lower St. Croix a little bit more in the position announcement. Just so it is not just showing as a Washington position, for example. And what the group's thoughts are on that. Is that an issue? Should we try to do something like that? And if so, if you have any thoughts on how to do it, please speak up.
Jay, I was thinking kind of the same thing. I'd like to see more of that, and I'm only seeing snapshots of what we have on paper so far, so I'm not sure if we're far off from that, but I just want to make sure that it is in there. I don't think a logo is necessary, but a narrative description.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. We do have, I mean, it does verbally say that it will be working with all those partners, but I was just looking to see if I had a good example from when we did stakeholder engagement meetings this past year. I don't really love this because it's not a logo, but I did, you know, for the stakeholder engagement workshops down at the bottom, have this little bar that just listed who all the participating entities are. It might.
Honestly, Angie, I think if that would be better than just showing the Washington logo and address on the top. We could just have a, you know, somewhere noting that we're going to be doing the, the person's going to be hired through the conservation district, but similar to MREP and for, Browns Creek and other partners that we work with for hiring, that I think it's really important to show that it's a shared position and not just a Washington Conservation District position.
Yeah, right as I was starting to say a list of participating entities, though, I realized that in addition to these, there's also the 25 MREP partners. And so this list of participating entities could easily end up being a list that's 35 things long. So does that still make sense, or does it make more sense to have something like this map here that's showing what the area is that the person is working within?
Or have it be a Laura St. Croix and MREP shared, position, and have that be and more prominent in the description.
Okay. Yes, right now I think that the position announcement does have an intentionally generic title that doesn't say, besides for having the logo at the top of the piece of paper, it says, though, I do, okay. Sorry for talking as I'm reading, because it is saying water resource education specialist to work in MREP and Lower St. Croix, but it does say the Washington Conservation District is seeking a highly motivated individual, and maybe I could strike that and, say the Lower St. Croix and MREP partnerships are seeking a highly motivated individual, and that would convey that this is a partnership position we are hiring.
Yeah, and then if we can refine kind of any of the required qualifications, must really enjoy collaboration.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Barb. That's a good point. We can link the plan in there.
Yep. Okay, let me get back to where we were. Basin Water Education Program, we decided that I'm going to tweak the position announcement and the draft job description to have a heavier emphasis on rural education and send the position description to Emily and the position announcement to Emily and the position description to this whole group. Correct? Is that what we just decided?
That sounds good to me. Jamie's thumbs up.
Okay. So are we rolling down then to activity number 5, structural urban BMP implementation?
Karen, thumbs up. Okay, thank you guys. No crying faces.
Okay, we have Mike volunteering to be the lead agency for structural urban BMP implementation. And a subcommittee composed of LSC partners will be developed to establish cost share ranking criteria. This is very much the same as what the subcommittee is doing for activity number 2, except it's with urban projects. That they're establishing cost share ranking criteria, meeting intermittently to rank projects and make recommendations, and also selecting non-structural urban projects. I guess I would point out that there's the added layer of this group is going to be overseeing this whole component of conducting enhanced street sweeping targeting analyses. So that is, substantively different than just approving projects to get cost share funding.
Angie, I guess this is Craig. I'll start out. These activity 5 and activity 2 are going to have to work together early on to develop the cost share ranking criteria. To me, we're going to want to be consistent, at least have that discussion up front. So if we can get, just throw that out there, we're going to have some maybe large meeting groups combining the 2 subcommittees, and then we kind of break out from there. But that's just one thing. And then secondly, I would volunteer one of my staff, Casey Thiel, to serve on this committee if we're okay with having non-steering committee members. She does a lot of our urban BMPs. So.
Emily, I know that you said you couldn't commit, you or Mike, but I'm putting Mike Kinney down with a question mark. Just because Comfort Lake Forest Lake did so much work on the enhanced street sweeping study for Forest Lake. And I know he did previously with Prior Lake, that he seems like a logical person to include in that conversation on doing that for other cities. Are there other people who want to be involved in the urban BMP component, including street sweeping?
Yes, I would like to volunteer one of the landscape architects from WCD. So Brian or Andy or someone like that.
Hi, Angie, this is Mike, and I'd also like to note too that the other two components that are integrated into this group would be the ordinance work for both MIDS and Shoreland. And so if folks have an interest or expertise in working with local decision makers, that's a really important part of this committee as well.
I thought that was getting integrated into the basin water education program, the MIDS and Shoreland ordinances.
Oh, okay. That's maybe I misunderstood that. I thought it was both because okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
But that is a good thing to point out, Mike, that I have in the position description for the basin water education program, an emphasis on outreach to local communities for MIDS and Shoreland ordinance updates. So I know like Derek isn't on the call today, but that was something that he was very interested in for Isani County. You know, I don't know if there's anybody else who, knowing that's a component, want to be involved in, you know, how the education gets implemented in the future. I think, Mike, what the confusion was is we weren't actually allocating funds to start doing the intensive ordinance work yet in the first 2 years. It was like education was going to lay the groundwork in the first 2 years to then do the intensive work in years 3 and 4.
Correct. And I was, and it's more of like a mental framework for me that the actual ordinance work is a non-structural BMP. And so I'm fine if it's housed in education. I was just thinking about it from a little bit different approach.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know that Derek wants to be involved in the education hiring committee, but I'm just, kind of making a mental note to myself too, that he's going to probably want to be involved in whatever kind of education is happening, especially, you know, up in Isani.
Sorry, I just had to step away for a second, and I heard Isanti, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Tiffany, I was saying that I know Derek is very interested in whatever work we're doing related to MIDS and Shoreland ordinance outreach at the decision maker level in Isani County. And I don't know that he necessarily wants to be on like the selection committee for the outreach educator, but I'm pretty sure he wants to be involved in whatever kind of outreach we do related to that in the future.
Yeah, we could ask him if he was interested in sitting on that, but I'm guessing that the answer might be no.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure no, just because I know that he, you know, he's got very limited time, and usually it feels to me like he tries to, you know, like limit the amount of participation hours that he puts into this.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Are there any other people who are wanting to be on the structural urban BMP implementation subcommittee from this group? We've got Mike Eisenseed, Mike Kinney, Casey Thiel, somebody from WCD, Brian Penn or Andy Novak.
I guess I would encourage others, because I mean, I don't know for sure with Comfort Lake. I mean, we don't know that yet, but this could be a committee then, which is fine of only 3. But if there's anybody else interested in the urban stuff, I would welcome. And again, this will be coming back to the steering committee for more of a recommendation and approval, but if you're interested, please jump on.
Hey, Matt, could we potentially have Tony involved? Okay.
Sorry, Jay.
Hearing no complaint, I volunteer Tony from South Washington.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Awesome, thank you.
Come on, Angie, I want to see you spell his last name.
No, I know. I was like, Tony.
Tony R.
Do people feel, have we elaborated enough on this? To roll on to wetlands. For wetlands, we do not have a volunteer for a lead entity.
My recommendation is, I mean, I would love to see Comfort Lake take the lead on this one just because of their background with everything. And I know they may not, you know, it's still to be determined. So Emily, do you know if there's any interest in being with this one?
I'm sorry, I really can't say at this point. I'm honestly not really sure which way the board will go. So I've got to wait for direction on that.
Jamie, how about you as far as some of the work you guys are doing with monitoring stuff with drained wetlands?
Yeah, we could. We're by no means the experts, and I don't know that there's an expert, you know, out there to the level that we all would hope and wish.
So Angie, why don't we put Anoka Conservation District here, and if Comfort Lake can join us, they can be one of the committee members, which would be great.
Yeah, I'd really like to have some representation from the geographic areas of Washington and Chisago County, just because I see some of the big wetland restoration opportunities coming from there. And yeah, Dan Fabian has made a comment here. What about Becky Wozni, Anoka Conservation District's wetland specialist? And I think she probably would be the first to come to mind for me too. She doesn't have a connection to our work so far though. So I would want to provide a bridge there myself.
How was Wozni?
N-E-Y.
N-E-Y, okay.
Yeah.
Caleb, would you be interested in Pine County joining this group?
Myself or Jeremy Williamson.
Oh, there's a cool echo happening now.
And I would volunteer Todd Kula to be on this group too.
Jay Riggs is a WACA, someone who does a lot of wetland conservation administration work. Would you be interested?
I can play. This is a great group, though.
For Chisago County, I will confirm with our wetland specialist, Jeff Ferdig, to see on his participation. But he would be the most likely contact for that. Fertig, F-E-R-T-I-G.
F-E-R-B-I-G, sorry.
But I put a question. I put a question mark on that just until I can confirm. Thanks.
Everybody's typing and
everybody's telling you how to spell Jeff's last name. It's Fertig.
Okay. Well, it went away now, but for a while everything was echoing, so I was hearing everything as like, you know, F F F E E E R R. It was just adding to the confusion of talking and typing at the same time. Okay, rolling down to internal analyses then, unless people want to say more about wetland restoration. Right now we've got lead agency as Chisago County. And potential liaisons for the subcommittee being Jerry, Susanna, and Mike Eisensee.
This is Jamie. I'd be willing to contribute on that.
Okay. Right. Targeting analyses. I'm going to go ahead and put a page break in here so we can look at it more easily. Currently, we have WCD listed as the lead agency, and staff liaisons for the subcommittee. Mike Eisensee is on the list and nobody else yet. Jay, would it be you for the targeting analyses from our office, or would it be more like Brian Pinn?
I think ideally, I think I would start out potentially participating, but I think it would be handed off to or be joint by by either Brian or Andy. So not all three, but kind of a combination.
Yep.
One or another. Yep.
I think we should add Comfort Lake on here, hoping, that there's interest. Hopefully they'll be listening in. And Angie, I'd have one of my staff. Just put Chisago SWC staff for now.
Pine County would take a spot.
Thank you.
Actually, if we can we call it Pine County / SWCD? Paul?
Perfect.
Yeah, the first big task of this group is going to be updating our prioritization protocols and what techniques apply to different situations and clarifying those protocols more clearly.
Under activity 9, this is the funds for technical engineering. And do we want to take the same approach that we did up here, where we're basically saying C activities 2 and 5? Are there any other activities where we were planning on billing?
I think that'd be a good support, because I think we need to add those in. Just a note for Emily, we need to add those into E-Link, because we not only need to have technical engineering time available for implementing projects, but we also want to make sure we're tracking in-kind technical engineering assistance from partners that can go a long ways towards providing our match.
So all that, just to clarify, all that subcommittee time, everyone should track in your own, timekeeping, and then send that to me and Craig, and then when it comes time to do the grant reporting, we'll put those hours under the match in activity 9. Or because the items themselves, item 2, like the urban BMP implementation, ag implementation, those aren't staff time items. Those are just like their E-Link category is construction implementation. So staff time wouldn't go there, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's a good point, Emily. Dan, how would you like to see that if we are having staff? Is it okay with you if we put all of the match for staff time under this activity right here?
Okay, I guess I missed that. It cut out. Can you repeat that again?
Is we have match for in-kind staff time, whether it's for a subcommittee group that we've just been talking about or for the design time of BMPs. Do you want that under each activity, or can we lump that all under this activity 9 technical and / engineering?
I think it could be lumped. What do you think is going to be easiest for keeping track of it? I mean, as long as you have the documentation and all that you can, know what they were working on.
Emily, don't you agree it'd be easiest if we had under one activity?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
We could chat more about that, Dan, you and Emily and myself.
Yeah, I just right now I can't think of a disadvantage to doing that. It'll help keep things a little bit less complicated.
Dan, is our match, can we record? I guess I hadn't thought about that. I'm glad you brought it up, Emily. Can we track all of our as long as it's not being paid for by state funds, if it's being paid for by non-state funds, our time for these subcommittees as we get the grant agreement signed, can that be tracked once the grant agreement is signed and executed?
Maybe check back with me on that.
Okay.
I have to think about that, how that works.
Definitely, though, we can count match for the staff time to design BMPs as long as it's not being funded by state dollars.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's kind of a part in there where you're, well, number one, I don't think you're going to need to match because it's only a 10% match, right? I mean, we should track that time. It's also leveraged funds. I think it'd be kind of like with the planning grant and that. You know, some of that you kind of expected to do as part of your job. Yeah, I don't know. We can talk about that a little bit more, Craig. I can see it both ways.
We did track for the planning grant the in-kind match, but there was not a match component for the planning grant.
Right. Yep.
We can talk about that, but for sure we'll want to match. So just for all you guys, we want to make sure that we track any technical engineering work that you are not paying for with state funds or using as match for another state grant. So just think about that as we're moving forward. Back to you, Angie.
Does anybody see any additional information that needs to be added to activity 9 and 10? Or is this good as is?
I don't, but Dan Fabian did bring up one good thing. He recommended Ben Meyer for the wetland component. Do we have any other non-local government unit people that we want in any of these activities? I mean, is there any, Dan or Barb, whether it's the two of you or someone else at a different capacity, is there anybody else that we recommend or that we might want to consider from a non-JPA, one of our partners, to be on these committees?
Mike Eisensee, who is the EOR person who was in our prioritization subcommittee meeting prior, who volunteered to participate?
I'm trying to think of which. So Mike Talbot is the EOR tech technical person that I work with to do modeling for targeting and prioritization, the desktop analysis work.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to potentially have some additional technical experts from outside. Whether or not we decide it's a good idea to have one consulting firm and not others represented is a whole nother conversation, but that's something we can talk about.
So that Mike Talbot would go potentially into the targeting analysis group?
Correct.
I would just caution.
Disagree.
I disagree too. I caution that.
I don't want any consultant.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's been deleted. It's gone.
I think it's okay to have state agency or federal agency people, but I'd caution private.
Yeah, and I don't know that Ben should be on the subcommittee. I was just saying, like, you might want to, he provides some technical expertise and some ties to the program and that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You might want to invite him to participate, but he wouldn't be like a voting member or anything. Plus, I don't want you to call and ask me to help with wetlands, because
as long as we have Jeff from Chisago, he knows the ins and outs of WACA and wetlands better than anybody, including the state agency.
I agree, Andrew. We probably should take Ben Meyer off. Just remember that as each activity lead, as you're working on these things, we can call upon some, state or federal experts if we need to for some guidance or assistance on programs.
Okay. Here's a question for the group. In bringing this to the policy committee on March 22nd, do you think that we need to give this level of detail and say, here are the people? I mean, it makes sense when we're talking about the selection committee members, but do you think I need to say for every, structural ag BMP, this is who we're thinking to be on the committee? And, or is that going to take them down a rabbit hole of talking about details that they don't need to talk about?
Angie, I think
My
if you-
suggestion, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Okay. If you're able to highlight with a blank those positions we're hoping to fill from policy committee members, that might help. I do think it's good to list the other names and their affiliations so that our policy committee members see how their area is represented.
Okay. That sounds good. So yeah, that would be good that I could do what you're saying, where we are specifically hoping to have their involvement on those hiring committees, to highlight that. And I will unhighlight here. And if somebody just put something in the chat, I didn't read it yet. Okay, so yes, Matt Downing is also agreeing that it's important to see representation people. Yes, I will add the orgs as well as the names before we share this with them. Oh, don't you hate that? Like once you have a highlight and then you can never make the highlight go away once it's in an outline, it's just there forever. Okay.
Angie, Paul Swanson just threw out that he'd like to serve on and I think, did we have Pine County, Pine SWC as far as the wetlands component?
Wetlands.
Just want to make sure that we have that listed on there.
Right now we had Todd Kula from ISANT
Okay.
SWC.
Yeah, why don't you add Paul to that one too, if you would, from.
Yeah,
from
sorry, I
Pine
missed
SWC.
that conversation. I got pulled away for a second on something else, so.
Yep, okay.
Thanks, Paul. Anybody else? I appreciate a lot of people have really raised their hand to help take the lead or be subcommittee people. Is there anybody else that's, after going through this list now, I'm saying, I'd like to participate because I welcome it as the fiscal agent. The more people we can get to participate and help bring these recommendations up through the steering committee and ultimately if we need to the policy committee, but going to the Chicago SWC board.
Hi, for activity 3, this is Susanna, Chisago County. And I'd like to be added to that, especially with looking at the mid section and then possibly others within the county as well, who are part of the original subcommittee in reviewing that. Thanks.
How do you want to, Craig, address asking Lance and Dave if they are interested in being on this hiring committee? Do you want to ask them in advance of the March 22nd?
I've already talked to both of them about it, and I'll talk to them some more. Yeah, I've talked to both of them, and they both had interest.
Okay. Do people in this group feel like it's okay if we're coming to the policy committee and saying we already have 2 people who we'd like to be on here, so we're not asking for further volunteers? Or does anybody feel like the policy committee would react poorly to that?
I think if it's accompanied by the type of description that Craig gave for why this is a recommendation, I think it would go well.
Okay.
I think so too.
Okay, so we could say this is who we're hoping to have on, but when it comes to the education, we don't yet have 2 people identified, so now we're looking for volunteers. One or two.
Yeah, I think we need to just have a memo format that's just like steering committee recommendations.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, yeah, we could ask the policy committee to approve these recommendations, because these recommendations this is just setting the format for our structural organization moving forward. So this doesn't have anything to do with the fiscal side of things as far as that, it's just a format we're developing to move forward. I think that'd be a good thing to have, yes.
Yes, right now maybe we can fast forward to talking about the March 22nd policy committee meeting before we potentially try to create an annual work plan, which might take forever. Since we do only have 25 minutes left and I want to make sure that we're ready for the policy committee meeting. So what I was suggesting is that the policy committee would review and approve the implementation framework recommended by the steering committee, which is basically what Jay and Craig just said. And we also have on here that they would potentially review and approve an annual work plan. Do we actually have time to create an annual work plan in 25 minutes right now, though?
We have to get it done sometime. I mean, why don't we at least lay out the format, and then tell partners they need to go in and enter stuff, and then we come back together as a group at a later date. I don't think we're required to have this done this month, but Dan and Barb, feel free to, I know we are required to take our current approved plan and discuss the things we're going to do outside of the WBIF funded work plan.
Yeah, I think it's whatever your plan says that you're going to do. And I think it included doing an annual work plan for how you're going to implement the whole plan, not just the WBIF portion. Feel free to jump in, Barb.
So we need to do it. For efficiency is a place to start that someone creates just a partial template of this annual plan. Just, 10 or 20 lines rather than go gangbusters and do the whole thing. And have all of us take a peek at that, especially Bowser staff, make sure it's acceptable before we move forward farther with it. Is that just a next step we can take?
So I am sharing on the screen right now. This is from our approved JPA, what it says about annual work plans. Annual work plans will be developed the detailed implementation of the plan minimally, including projects and programs to be completed collaboratively and associated budgets. A fiscal agent and a responsible party or party shall be identified for each project, program, or implementation activity. The annual work plan may include a summary of projects, programs, and implementations to be accomplished with state watershed-based implementation funds, competitive state grants, local funds, or others. So our JPA only says that we have to include projects that we're doing collaboratively. We may also include projects that individual partners are doing separately. But we do have to have some way, obviously, of tracking things that are happening towards the CWMP that aren't happening with WBIF funds. I feel like I just said a ridiculous long string of alphabet letters.
So could this be as simple as kind of like an Excel spreadsheet and everyone can plug their information into there?
That's what we, yeah, that's what we discussed doing at the planning team meeting a couple of weeks ago. And I did send everybody the link to that really swell Excel sheet that Emily had created that we already used to create the WBIF work plan. And previously we had just hidden all of the rows for activities that weren't going to get funded with WBIF funds. But creating a new spreadsheet that unhides those allows us to, put a little check mark next to anything that's been going to be completed. Otherwise, I'm opening this, Emily, but then it's your spreadsheet, so I almost feel like you're better at talking about it than me, or you know the spreadsheet better than me. Why is this all blank that it's not filling in and we can't actually see anything? Sorry for the dramatic sigh. Here we go. Now it's filling in. It's just like taking forever to fill in so you can actually see. I just took unhid all of the rows and then started looking at, well, here's the implementation actions. This is from our full plan. is it addressed by WVIF work plan? Yes, or partially. And then I created a separate column for, is there anticipated progress in years 21 through 23 through other funding sources? For the purposes of having a plan, you know, like, I don't know, how much detail would we need to put in this column?
Angie, I guess I'll back. I apologize. As an example, some of us just received Clean Water Fund grants. A bunch of mine were for the Ag BMPs right below on that one. Is that someplace where we could just list, you know, Chicago SWC FY21 Clean Water Fund grants in these watersheds? Is that something that we could list in there? Is that sufficient? And how much money we received?
That's what I'm hoping, but I'm kind of looking for the group and particularly Bowser to tell us if that's okay.
I think it'd be very easy if that was the case, if we just went through and did that. We could have columns on the far right with each of our organizations, and we just fill in the spots in the columns there, and then that's just combined into one document.
I think you guys had measurable goals for each of these, right? So you might want to give an estimate on your progress towards meeting those goals also.
What is the best use of our next 15 minutes that we have together as a steering committee? Is my question. I or Emily could, you know, send this out to everybody to fill in, but then people would need to fill it in such a way that we could create a document to bring to the policy committee by March 22nd. We could roll through here right now as a group, and I could just make little notes like where Chisago SWCD just said, we're going to do something about that. I could just write, you know, Chisago SWCD Clean Water Grant right now, and then, you know, follow up directly with those people to put more information into the spreadsheet after the meeting.
I guess my recommendation would be to send it out to everybody, give us a X amount of days, if it's the end of this week or whatever. I don't believe this needs to go to the March 22nd policy committee.
It doesn't, okay.
I don't believe it does unless somebody wants to correct me. Because that gives you, I mean, next Monday, the agendas are going out for the policy committee.
Yes.
So I don't think realistically we could have this done unless we want to stay on and work on this for another hour or two today.
No,
but if we each had by the end of work on Thursday or whatever, you have, you know, or Wednesday, a couple days, just go in here, just quick add the task that you're working on. If one of you guys want to look at I think Barb said recommended looking at that page 93 to 95 of our watershed management plan, just, you know, send out the information that's on those pages. Here's what we need. We can each take 10 minutes of our time and get this information back to you. And if there's follow-up questions, we can do that. Thank you, Emily. I just think that's, and then we have a policy committee meeting in April or May where we finalize the annual plan. There's going to be more work of things that we need to bring forward to the PC.
Okay.
That sounds good to me. Thumbs up.
Okay. I like that idea because I cannot bear the thought of starting to try to do that right now as a group, to be completely honest.
Thank you. I have a request for the group.
Mm-hmm.
As we've been moving forward through this process, we've been talking about multiple shared staff, the education outreach position plus the agronomy specialist, the agronomist. And that was going to be hired as a full-time staff person. That's in the work plan. It was in the plan, et cetera. At the last planning team meeting, Mike Kinney brought up that he thought we should contract for the agronomist position. And I know we talked about that as a group and it went back and forth. And I know, Craig, you had thoughts about that. So I'm wondering what the steering committee's position is on that. We have funding for a full-time position. Should we be pursuing contracting that work, or should we be moving forward with hiring that person as a staff person?
Jay, can I ask a question this way? Does anybody object to hiring that person as a staff person?
Can I just hear a little bit from the folks who've thought about this for a while, what some of the pros and cons would be in either side?
Good question. I don't think it was really brought up as to, Mike didn't really say what the pros would be of contracting out. So we had been up to that point in what's in the work plan and what's in the plan itself. It was listed as shared staff.
The contract, Matt was asking contract where, when Mike Kinney suggested it, it was contracting with Minnesota Extension was his suggestion. So that Minnesota Extension would be the, the person would be hired, employed through Minnesota Extension, and we would be contracting with them for their services here in the Lower St. Croix watershed. And I did put, to Emily's question, I did put language in the framework saying that that selection committee could do a quick cost benefit analysis of hiring a person versus contracting with Minnesota Extension. Or even if Minnesota Extension is even willing to do something like that.
I mean, this position, honestly, and the concept around an agronomist for the Lower St. Croix is modeled after what the extension service used to provide. And so, I mean, we think back 20, 30 years, you used to have an extension person who would provide these services for farmers, and that those services are no longer provided. And so that's why there's this gap. And just as a side note, and it's been a while, but the last time I looked at collaborating with the University of Minnesota, their overhead costs were extremely high when compared to a small local unit of government.
From the sense of a cost benefit analysis, it would be possible to get an updated cost maybe from extension. But I don't know how much that helps the decision making, because I think this is not so much about numbers. It's about investment in long-term position versus a short-term need for which we might contract. And there's those sorts of considerations, not as much just the money.
Yeah, and I guess my perspective is back to that the long-term investment. I feel that by having a local employee working within just this watershed, we have more of an opportunity to build those relationships. I mean, ag projects are really built on relationships and trust. And even though there's no guarantee that a person hired locally would leave after a year or two, it seems like we have a better opportunity to have that trust building occurring over many years with a local staff versus a contract position.
You know, I thought I had recalled from previous conversations that Craig also had a person that would do the agronomist type of work and that. And I thought, again, I guess like Emily had mentioned, that was something you guys were going to put back to that subcommittee to give some thought to, and they could spend a little bit more time on it.
Are there any
Jay,
other
are you
thoughts
okay
on-
with Jay? Are you okay with just that's a discussion the subcommittee will have?
Absolutely. I wanted to get the feelings of the rest of the steering committee, since that was brought up.
Well, I didn't hear anybody strongly objecting to hiring. I mean, there's definitely interest in at least exploring the option, but I think the overall feeling I got was that people were supportive of hiring more of a long-term position.
Does anybody in the group have any strong opinion either way?
Jerry Spetzman says he recommends hiring, as opposed to contracting. He typed that in the chat just now.
Thank you.
Just from my background, this is Craig. I mean, we know how long it can take working with landowners, whether it's farmers or you know, whatever. But my background working with farmers, it can take years building that trust and that relationship, and nothing guarantees this person's going to stay with us for years. But there's a lot of work that we've accomplished after having staff people meeting and building that trust, and you know, after, you know, it takes 2, 3, maybe 5 or 10 years to get that work done. And so I guess I would favor hiring somebody.
It looks like Caleb Anderson also said he favors hiring.
I do too. In part, as I envision this person having more connections if they're housed right in the SWCD office, like at Craig's, because there's existing staff there that already have connections. We're building on that, whereas a contracted position, that person may feel more distant.
Excellent. Okay, I think we can bring it back to then, I think we have most people leaning toward the hiring, but then we can work with the subcommittee to develop the position announcement, et cetera. And then if they want to, that committee can then reach out to the extension service or other potential contractors. And Dan, I think you're referring to Lance. Craig was actually, I think, alluding to Lance, and I don't think Lance is interested in contracting for this work anymore.
Well, that was Dave Tolberg, excuse me.
Oh, sorry, it was Dave Tolberg. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Correct.
Then since we have 5 more minutes before our meeting is ending, I want to make sure I know what the policy committee needs to do on March 22nd. And at the moment, since we have taken away annual plan, the only thing we are asking them to do is review and approve the implementation framework recommended by the steering committee. Is that correct? And is there anything else that we want them to do?
In that framework, Angie, I want to make sure, and there's 2 items right now where we're asking for policy committee recommendation or assistance, and that's the activities 1 and 3. But I think we need to make sure we make it clear that the rest of the activities at this point will be staff-led activities that will work through the subcommittees, ultimately through the steering committee, and then that recommendation, it's just my recommendation at this point, that recommendation would move forward to the Chisago SWCD for approval. Does anybody object to that mechanism where it goes to subcommittee? I don't know if we want to go subcommittee, planning team, steering committee, or how we'll do it, but I'm fine with subcommittee review coming to a full steering committee, and then ultimately the recommendation going to the Chisago SWCD. But do others think we need to go back to the policy committee for everything? And I would prefer not, just because of the timing frame of everything and getting things accomplished. Does anybody object to that idea?
I don't object.
So I will note that somewhere in the framework that these other committees are going to be reporting back to the steering committee to make recommendations to the make recommendations to Chisago SWCD. So are you, let me make sure I understand this as I'm starting to say it out loud again, Craig. Right now, for example, under structural urban BMP implementation, I say that the subcommittee will meet intermittently to rank projects and make recommendations to Chisago SWCD board for approval. But you're saying actually they would make recommendations to the Lower St. Croix Steering Committee, who would then recommend it to your board for approval?
If my board wants it to come through the group as a recommendation.
They want it to come from the full steering committee, not from a subcommittee.
Whether it's a steering committee or policy committee, they want the recommendation coming from.
Okay.
To me, the steering committee is a staff-led. The policy committee is an official, a board-led decision. They want to come as a recommendation from one of those 2.
So it's like the subcommittee is making a recommendation to this group, this full steering committee, who makes an official recommendation to your board for approval is what we're suggesting right now.
Correct.
Angie, Emily made a point that there have been a lot of changes to the E-Link work plan, and that should be sent out to the policy committee in their packet.
Yeah, that's a good point, Emily.
I agree.
Okay.
Emily, on that discussion, our goal is to have the E-Link work plan stuff submitted by next Monday. Do you envision having that done this week where we could share it with the steering committee for any final thoughts or recommendations?
Yeah, I think so. I've been sort of taking notes as we assign these lead agencies to each activity. I'm not sure if the E-Link work plan needs to detail out who's all in the subcommittees. I think there's still a lot of question marks in there anyway. So maybe the E-Link work plan leaves out the full list of subcommittee liaisons, but I think we've narrowed down who the lead agency for each activity is. And so we'll include that. I'll reach out to Jerry and Susanna to get qualifications. But I think everybody else, we've got the qualifications of the lead agency staff involved. Oh, and Mike Eisensie too. You're the lead on that. So we just need to list your qualifications for E-Link requirements. And then, yeah, I think it should be good to submit. I'm kind of keeping track of the changes that have been made since the last time, and I'll highlight those and send them out to maybe just straight out to the steering committee after this meeting.
Okay.
Thanks,
And then
Emily. Did you see the Barb? Okay, yep.
Emily, I'll also coordinate with you on how to format the spreadsheet for everybody to enter in their information for the full annual work plan.
Okay.
Okay. So March 22nd policy committee meeting. Provide them with an update on the implementation timeline, note changes made to the E-Link work plan since their January meeting, and review and approve implementation framework recommended by the steering committee. Okay. And then we can maybe just tell them that we're working on developing a full annual work plan, which we would bring to them in either April or May. Okay, and hopefully if we had the meeting in May versus April, maybe we would even have updates on positions hired by then. Maybe.
I think that's a good goal, Angie. I think we should skip April, just such a tight turnaround. But if we shot for May for having a meeting, they could set the date on that also. It's
Okay.
fourth Monday, I guess, of the month, but just put that on their radar.
Okay. All right, I will just maybe then say goals for the May policy committee meeting to bring them a full annual plan to review and approve and to hopefully introduce new staff. Okay. Steering committee. It is
Before we go, I have one last thing I have to go over with the steering committee.
Okay.
Last Thursday, Emily, Jay, and myself sat in with a meeting with Linda Dene, the grants compliance specialist with Bowser, and Dan Fabian, and went over, this is a very large grant with a lot of partners, and Bowser has had some issues with these large one wash, one plant grants just because of the number of partners. So we will be requiring a meeting coming up here, probably watch for a doodle poll before too long, that if you're going to be a partner participating in the funding avenue of things with this grant, you'll need to participate in a brief 45-minute to an hour long meeting as a group, as a steering committee, with Linda leading us through the grants compliance requirements for this grant. So we'll just need all of us to listen in on that and participate. So watch for the doodle poll. Jay or Emily, do you have anything you want to add as you also said in that meeting?
No, that was good. Thanks, Craig.
No, I'll just note, I'm kind of keeping track of little notes to make like that in the work plan itself too. And I can just have a sentence or two that says these agreements will be in place so that we maintain compliance with state requirements.
Correct.
Yeah. There's one thing I do want to mention is that we need to do everything we possibly can to simplify the accounting process for Craig and Emily for the Bowser reporting. So whenever we're developing subcommittees and strategies for implementation and reporting, let's try to keep things as simple as possible.
And uniform across the board too, otherwise you'll become the fiscal agent if you don't.
Right. We want to keep Craig happy so we can keep Linda happy.
Thank you.
This is something that I keep always forgetting about until we are having the policy committee meeting. We used to have Cameron taking minutes during the policy committee meetings, and we never really established who would take minutes now that Cameron is not doing that. During the last meeting, Jay and I kind of took turns taking minutes. It may be easier to do that now that they are officially back to facilitating their own meetings, unlike last time where I had to kind of facilitate the meeting.
I think for now, I think it would be good to have a volunteer from the steering committee to take notes, and then it would be fair to have it distributed around. Personally.
Yes, I just wanted to bring it up because I always forget until right before the meeting starts, and all of a sudden I go, oh shoot, this is really difficult to facilitate a meeting and take minutes at the same time.
I would agree, Jay. I think we spread it around. We're not talking a lot of policy committee meetings coming up. I mean, I don't envision that. I was going to say we could each take our turn, the 16 of us, but I mean, I don't think there's that many partners, or that many meetings coming up. So if someone wants to be volunteer, that would be great.
So I would rephrase that as Angie needs a volunteer from this group now. So we know who's going to take notes.
Hey, Jay, I was trying to volunteer, so you don't have to say it anymore. Maybe I can do.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't forget to bring that up again before we all bid adieu.
Angie, thank you. This is not an easy task, and I appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. And thank you and Emily for doing the e-link fiscal stuff, because I definitely do not want to take on any of that. Okay. Shall we all go our separate ways and enjoy the rest of our Mondays?
Take care, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.